Hey, everybody.
Mayor.
Oh, good. I had my speakers off. I couldn't figure out whether I had audio or not. Good.
Y'all do know today is Constitution Day, don't y'all?
Constitution Day?
Yes.
That's right.
Signing the American Constitution, U.S. Constitution.
I'm reading the biography, it's a long one, of Alexander Hamilton. And there's a lot of great history in there, obviously, about the Constitution coming into being and his advocacy for it and all like that. It's really fascinating.
Yeah, they made a little play about him, remember?
Yeah, I'm enjoying the book. The play didn't grab me for whatever reason. Maybe I'm out of touch with modern.
No, the play, we saw the play up in Greenville at the Peace Center. It was absolutely magnificent.
Live, I bet it's just has a different effect on you. I tried watching a little bit on TV and it didn't quite work.
No, it's not the same thing.
But the book is great. All right, we got everybody we need here on board.
I think we're waiting on council members Gregory and Waring.
Okay. Well, we'll give them another minute, maybe. We're going to start off with TNT.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Mayor, while we're waiting, I want to give TNT the most, the award for the most creative descriptions, mind-catching descriptions. Thermoplastic melting kettle and trailer.
That's the actual name, but yeah.
Decorative green pole replacement bases, crash attenuator. Very intriguing.
Yesterday, I was taking a left onto King from Line Street, and Keith will tell you I often send him pictures of things that need a little attention from our staff. And the crosswalk signal there at the corner, somebody must have run into it. And I was just going to block up the street, and so I was going to take the picture coming back down. By the time 5 minutes later, when I was coming back down King Street, the crew was already there. They were already out there to repair it.
Well, I'll show my card and say there's a rumor that we have a King Street walk coming up in a couple of weeks. So folks trying to get their act together a little early.
There you go.
I thought maybe they just had a spy camera on you, Mayor, and wherever you went, they would fix it. That's what they need.
They're very responsive, I must say. But I will ask while we got another minute, Keith, what about the corner of King and Calhoun? One of the signals has been looked like you're waiting for parts or something. I don't know, but
yeah. So with that light has been fixed. I spoke to Tom 2 days ago about his folk coming through to lay back down the bluestone, and then we would put the cap on the bottom of the light. So that bluestone needs to be laid first, then we put that cap on, but the fixture itself is fixed. Okay. We just need that bluestone laid down first. And I called Tom about that 2 days ago.
Hey, Keith.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I talked to Melvin about that. We're on rain day duty today helping stormwater, so if they don't get it tomorrow, we'll probably get it the first of the week, okay?
Yes, sir.
it was the one across the street, right across in front of Walgreens, that just needed the light bulb replaced.
Okay, I'm marking that down right now.
All right, well, we're about 10 after. Amy, why don't we go ahead and kick this off, and hopefully the other council members will join us shortly.
Okay. You want to start with a moment of silence?
Please, will you all please join me in a moment of silence as we dedicate our prayers and thoughts to all those who have been victims of the coronavirus. Amen. Thank you so much.
Okay, so we'll just go over the, we talked about the three departments that we had scheduled for today. And then if we have time, I have some others we can go over real quick. So I will turn it over to Mr. Benjamin.
Benjamin.
Thank y'all for the opportunity. I'm not going to actually take too much time. I know that you all have been sent the documentation of our requests that we made on last year, what we were funded for, and otherwise. BFRC staff, both Amy and also Emma, I don't know if she's on, but were extremely helpful to us. Our goal this year was really just about retaining our gains last year in a significant way. You all assisted us, not just in resource capacity to move the needle forward on a number of different things, but personnel capacity. And so what we did was, per the request of BFRC, made the necessary 10% cuts within our 2020 approved budget, but also figured out how to maintain those cuts while keeping our two primary requests, which were to basically fulfill the two positions we were not able to hire this year, that being the multimodal safety program manager and then also the additional inspector. So those are really our only two requests, to basically be able to fulfill those capacity needs in next year. What I did want to draw you all's attention to was something that I got to credit Tracy McKee and also Michael Mathis in helping put together, because I don't want to come to you with an ask and not how to fund, is it's long been a topic of conversation about how our permits with TNT are handled, how much we do and do not charge, and where there may or may not be opportunities for adjustments there. And so over the last couple of months, there's been on and off meetings, not just with us, but also with public services, about what exactly that looks like. And what I wanted to do, if y'all give me 2 seconds, is just kind of give you a visual understanding of what we might be missing out on, and allow that to kind of give you an indication of what might need to be looked into. I'm going to say this because I don't want Amy to pull my coattails on this, but the planning department did a very, very, very thorough job of going through their building inspections process for how they determined what their permits amounts should be and what that should transition to. And so I definitely yield to that process, but I did want to at least give you an indication of what's being missing. If Jennifer could give me the opportunity to share my screen, I can at least give some of that.
I stopped sharing mine, so you should be able to share yours.
Thank you. Can y'all see? So just to give you a sense of orientation, with TNT, we issue dumpster permits, which we currently charge only $10 per day. We do street blocking permits, which we don't charge for at all. So for example, on B Street, where they're currently redoing the brick on that building right at B and Lockwood, that project is scheduled to take between 12 and 18 months. They're not paying a dime to the city for occupying the public right of way for that. For construction parking permits, which basically is our ability to issue parking permits where there are residential areas. That's at no cost to those companies that come to us. So though the residents might be paying to park in a residential area, those who are at construction sites and have the issued permits do not. Moving permits, same thing. And then with meter bags, we currently charge less, about half of what it would be for you to simply feed the meter for the entire day with our meter bag permit. So what we did here, just a quick piece just to give you a sense. You see here all 3 years, 2018 to 2020, of the amount of permits in each category, how much we currently charge for those permits. And also this fact here, which is common in other cities, the permit processing fee, There's the only one that has kind of such a fee is a deposit piece with the meter bags, but other than that, no processing fee. And all we did here was to just give an example. This is not full analysis or otherwise, but just to give you a sense, if there was just a processing fee put on top of what we currently charge, what those additional potential revenues could be. Now, definitely, as was the case with the planning department and how they handled their building permits, there's aspects where you can't be making a profit on these. So it's important to make sure we're vetting this through how other cities have done this and otherwise. But I did want to bring up the fact that as you all are looking at various different revenue streams, what can be adjusted and not, I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up the permits that we issue as a department and how they've been handled. So I'll stop there, but just, for us in terms of our assets, just retaining our gains and being able to fulfill the positions that we were awarded last year, and just bringing up this topic of reviewing our existing permits and what we currently charge with those fees.
I had a question, Mr. Mayor, about that.
Well, I was going to suggest that we come forward with some specific recommendations for those fees. And to tell you the truth, one reason being just as an incentive for those who are using the public right of way to keep their use at a minimum. I wouldn't want to have any kind of exorbitant fee, but the case I remember the most is over here at Cumberland Street. We've had almost a whole block closed between East Bay and Concord Street for close to a year while there was a construction project going on. And it's been at some inconvenience to the surrounding property owners and to traffic and to the city that they took up half of the right of way for a year and we didn't charge them a single dime. So I think we ought to be adding a charge for that and look at maybe the dumpster fee is good enough, but the bags, you ought to at least just up it to where, as Keith said, at least you're paying as much as if you were renting the space for the whole day and pumping the meter. So I think it's appropriate to come back with some specifics on those charges, and let's put them in place for next year. Wouldn't be a lot of revenue, but it would cover some of our costs. Those are real expenses we're seeing.
I agree, Mr. Mayor. Keith, can you share the lost revenue chart that you just showed us? So we can ponder that as we blend it into everything else. But yeah, I don't think we should.
And I just want to make sure I'm clear about what people are seeing. So all we did was just at this top portion here, add just what a processing fee would be. Right. So we're not even including what it would mean to change what we currently charge. So if this stayed the same, we just had a processing fee, here's what that potentially would be for that, let alone if we, made the additional changes. And again, this is, there's been preliminary work and otherwise, but I agree with the mayor that there's some things that just make sense to think about.
I would just add too, we would probably include the parking residential permits in this as well. But again, there's a state law that says we cannot charge more than we are providing for services. And there's a lot of work that needs to go into it to ensure that whatever we're charging is not more than what it's actually costing us to provide the service. I just want to make sure everybody remembers that.
Yes, ma'am.
Understood.
Mayor.
Councilmember Shade.
Thank you. So I think we need to continue this discussion. You're talking about particularly public right-of-ways. So you are creating a disruption of the rest of the public. I'm having at least a level of inconvenience on these things as they block roadways and they take away these meters. So I would just hope that we would continue this discussion and follow up on that. I'm curious, Keith, on that very last number of total of all permits That's $623,000. I'm looking at. So that is a computation of all these numbers on the top row, on the $10 to $100 category.
No, sir, everything goes linear straight down. So if we were charging a $100 processing fee for all of these permits, for the amount that amount of permits that we've given in the last 3 years, that's the total of what that processing fee would be if it was at $100 for those permits. So
It'd be
this is all just, these are, if it was a $10 processing fee, $20, $30 processing fee, this is not at all speaking to changing the actual cost of the permit itself.
Okay. I just want to make sure that I was clear on that. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Is that Councilmember Gregory?
Yeah, let's just take as an example the B Street in Lockwood.
Yes, sir.
Where they're going to be shut down we're going to shut it down for almost 18 months, I think.
Yes, sir.
The sidewalk, as well as one lane for part of each day for 18 months.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. If we had a fee there, what would that cost be off the top of your head?
It really varies. There's cities that have a high processing fee and then a low day-to-day charge. And then there's cities that just have, if you're for the amount of days that you're doing it, there's a baseline charge for what that would be. So right now it's absolutely nothing, not even per day or just a general processing fee for what that is. I know I'm being repetitive, but Jamie's point, obviously can't make profit, but the fact that there's no charge for that is critical. And using that example, as you know, Councilmember, because we had like 40 people in my conference room
Yes.
about that issue.
Yes.
You know, they had to go and get agreements they had to get encroachment permits from public service. They had to sign agreements with the Parks Department that they would replace the irrigation and the landscaping that they are currently putting rocks over as you make that curve onto the crosstown. They had to get permission to be able to, from SADOT, to use right-of-way. There's a lot of hurdles they had to go through to make that happen. So figuring that out, I think is critical. I mean, on the construction parking permit issue, if you just go to Lee Street, Nassau, Hanover right now, if you talk to the teachers over at Sanders Clyde, you know, that conversation is constantly coming up about construction parking and how it's infringing on residential areas as well. So I think there's all sorts of benefits outside of the financial benefit, but definitely think it should be something to look into.
I mean, particularly staying on the B Street and what you just illustrated, the staff time involved alone to make that happen was pretty extensive.
Yes, sir.
And that's a cost that the city has to bear. Like, if we continue in this route, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Waring.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Number one, I agree with the mayor and what he said on this. As a matter of fact, I'm very familiar with Cumberland and East Bay, where the hotel is going up there. We just went through there on Sunday, and even though the lane is back open, Mayor, when you turn off of East Bay onto Cumberland, making the right turn off of East Bay onto Cumberland, if you head out of town, they got two gates for a chain link fence just leaning up against the building, which somewhat restricts the turn radius there. You know why? Just because they can. Now, the sidewalk that was once there obviously has not been put back because construction is going on, but the majority of that construction is on the inside. Because it's free, they are being a little bit derelict in cleaning up that sidewalk, making it, number one, a little bit more presentable. I'm gonna say the sidewalk area. And they're storing stuff there that certainly can be stored someplace else. All I would say, ride through the east side of Cumberland Street and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. I agree with Mr. Benjamin on this in that, you know, I'm a big fan of fee income. If we were to go back and look at how we increased the permit fees and the building and application fees in the planning and zoning area, you know, they still proved to be pretty beneficial if we were to look back on where we were and where we are now. So I would compare what Mr. Benjamin is doing to what what we did last year. Amy, was it last year, Amy, or the year before? Increasing permit fees, not permit fees, but application fees for, you know, BZA and planning commission and things like that. So I know you got the cost factor that you made mention, and we can't, you know, make a profit off the public right away. I get that, but I agree with Councilman Gregory in that if you add up our costs, I know one thing is not free. So
It can be substantial, that's right.
that's what I think. So Mr. Benjamin, one question to you. You said in some cities, you know, they have a high processing fee, and in others they have, I'm gonna say, a reasonable that's my term, processing fee and a higher daily rate. Um, if you were king for a day, which one would you recommend?
The daily rate.
The daily rate. I agree. My thinking would be because these project tends to run over, and you collect more money in the long run.
Well, it also helps on the accountability front, council member, and I don't want to call out specific projects, but
Right.
it just helps on the accountability front where we run into issues of, you know, times where there might be a habitual line step. Obviously, that helps on the inspection side. We only have one inspector. That's part of the reason why we advocating for the inspector we were awarded last year to be able to get next year, so we can be monitoring these sites, citing them if necessary, or having conversations.
Okay.
You know, but that accountability piece, I think, is extremely critical, right?
Right.
You know, with the B Street, for example, you know, part of the stipulation, not to hemp on that one, but since we're talking about it, one of the stipulations was that at every juncture monthly, they have to give an update to the entire medical district, stakeholders, and otherwise as to how things are moving, if there are changes or whatever that is. That allows us to keep them accountable in that regard. So I think part of the daily piece allows us to hold them accountable on what they're committed to, what they said they're going to be doing, making sure that they're fulfilling their permits.
I agree. I think it's a great idea. Thanks for thinking out of the box on this one. And think about it. Anybody that blocks a street, that's not a mom and pop project. That's going to be, you know, pretty major project and a well-funded project.
So Keith, get with Amy and me, and we'll come back to a future meeting with in time for next year's budget with a fee schedule proposed. I would, I don't mean to pick on those. Well, maybe I do mean to pick on that project over on Cumberland Street, you know, because I ride by there a good bit, and it would kind of bother me. And after I inquired about it, I found out they had the permit for one lane. Well, often they were closing the whole street and just shutting down traffic. And come to look, they were just using half of the space as a parking lot to, you know, so their workers could park a little closer to the project than wherever it was that they were supposed to be parking. So if we don't have a structure like this in place, I think folks will take advantage of it.
Yeah, and I'd be remiss if I didn't throw in there that inspector will help us too, right? Because that inspector has the ability to cite. You know, that is a high fee. That citation when somebody has violated a permit's $1,000. So the ability to inspect and to cite if folk are operating outside of what's been permitted is extremely helpful.
All right.
Don't be too conservative, Mr. Mayor.
What's that?
And don't be too conservative.
Okay, thank you. All right, Keith, you want to proceed?
I'm good. I'll read it because I know some council members came in last. Just a reiteration of our ask going into this year is essentially to retain our gains. Last year we were awarded personnel capacity, and so we made the necessary cuts with our new ask, and pretty much our ask are to maintain being able to hire the multimodal manager, being able to hire the inspector. So we pulled back on what's usually been the case of our ask, and otherwise understanding where we are financially, and but wanted to make sure we were moving the needle on capacity.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you for all y'all's good work too. All right, other questions for Keith? All right, Amy, who's up next?
Okay, so I'm not muted. Okay, so public service, so I'll turn it over to Tom.
Thank you, Amy. Council members, Mayor. Also have Matt Alsop on the call with us to can answer any specific questions. But as we all know, it's been a very difficult, tough budget year, and we worked very hard, all our division heads, not to reduce service, but just hopefully to reduce cost. And we came up with our priority list. And Amy, I think, is that available? We can share it to what we were looking for.
Yeah, everybody should have them. I can share it if you need me to, but everybody.
Okay, I'll just, it's only a few things, so I think I can just go over. Anybody's having specific questions, we can go back. But our number one priority was to get another ASL, one of our automatic side loaders, which really will be used as a backup. And that's the last of the planned purchases for right now. And that is built into our long-term replacement plan. As we know, under the generosity of this council and mayor, we've been able to continue to buy our equipment and keep our fleet. I've been here a long time, in the best shape it's ever been in. And that's helped us with our service because we don't have vehicles that are down. And the ASLs, Matt, maybe just want to speak for a moment. As y'all are probably aware, this past Monday, we started some of our rerouting. And Matt, could you just kind of tell them a little bit how that's helped us and with cost savings and reduction in time spent out on the routes?
Sure. So in the long run, it's gonna save us a bunch of time. On Monday, we were able to complete the routes by 3 o'clock. Normally Monday is our big day, and it's usually 6 or 7. By the reroute, we reduce the number of trucks we use each day. On Mondays, we usually averaged around 12 trucks per day, and this last week we averaged 9. And for the rest of the week, it was usually around 10, and we've reduced that to 8 trucks per day now. So just a cost of the maintenance on the equipment, the employees, the benefits and everything is going to be a big cost savings in the future by switching a lot of the routes over to the ASLs, as there are only one employee in those trucks.
And this is something to kind of piggyback on that. We're in the process right now, the waste services contract for the Daniel Island Cainhoy area. We're actually in the negotiating process right now. Republic, who's held that contract for the last few years, we've had some service issues with them, and the determination was made to go out and rebid that. We have a bid with Capital Waste out of Columbia, who is given us a really good price. We're really excited about, and we're working with them on that price. And that's reflected, I think, further down in our budget. We're not exactly sure what that cost will be yet, but we've made some budget adjustments for that. And currently we have out the Outer West Ashley contract, which Carolina Waste done. And Matt, that comes back in when?
Sorry, I didn't hear you.
I said, when does the Carolina Waste contract proposals come back in?
So they should be in at the end of October is when they should be in. I think it's October, the 3rd week in October is when they're due.
And we're very excited about the Capital Waste contract that we're going to bring to council hopefully next month for Daniel Island Cainhoy, a new company who's been doing a lot of good work at Seabrook Island and up in the Columbia area. Got very good reviews from all their customers that we talked to, their management team. And one thing that we kind of decided to do, a lot of times when things are going well, you just don't really keep up and check on these things. We're going to have a monthly meeting with our contractors for the waste services, and we're going to have a report card. Tracy's working on us to come up with some metrics for that. So we can just meet, and if everything's going well, they'll get a good grade. If not, their grade will not be so good, but at least it'll keep us in tune and on top of that, because as we all know, one of the basic services of government besides police and fire is our environmental services, and the crews we have, the ladies and gentlemen that work for us out there are doing an outstanding job, and we appreciate the support of council on that. So I just wanted to pass that on. That's something that's very important. They're hardworking, and they're just, it amazes me. Anytime there's anything like a blood drive or anything for donations or stuff, they're always one of the first groups to step forward. They're very generous, and they really appreciate their jobs. And I know Matt and I and Clyde and everybody else up there. We appreciate the work as all you do. Just, we have some really nice comments to come back and have some really nice things that have happened for them lately. So just wanted to pass that on. Next article that we have in our budget, we'd asked for some money for a garbage cart audit. And Matt, you want to tell them a little bit why we were doing that?
Can I interrupt a quick second,
Yes, sir.
Mr. Mayor, and ask a question?
Sure.
Councilmember Ware and I had talked about this a couple of weeks ago, and I want to make sure I ask this question correctly. And Keith, to jump in with me if you don't mind, if I missed a point on this. But these contracts that we have are for regular pickup on those areas on the other side of Daniel Island and West Ashley. When we have an event like a storm event or something out of the ordinary, put it that way, our regular crews go back up and pick up the slack on that. Because the way these contracts are written, they're not, unless I'm wrong on this, they're not obligated on those extra storm debris pickup or other events that may occur kind of pickup. Am I correct on that?
Yes, you're correct on that. They don't have to participate in the collection of hurricane debris or storm related debris. But that's part of the reason why we went out and secured 2 contractors to help us with that, as far as Ashbrit and them. So we have that as a backup now. But they do, if it's like a wind storm that creates a little bit more debris, they will clean it up. But anything such as a tropical storm or heavier, that we'll usually have to help them with.
There's
And Matt, along the same lines, since they're not our employees, when it comes to something like a storm coming up, the company can pull back on the service as well. I mean, they can say, we don't want to put our employees at risk or something along those lines. And so they have control over that aspect of it as well. Isn't that correct?
So they do, but they don't do anything until the governor issues the state of emergency and evacuation. Until that is issued, they plan on working, and they have worked up until that order is given to evacuate.
Councilmember Ware, you remember that discussion that you and I had about this several weeks ago?
Yeah, I think the mayor had touched on part of that too. I remember one recent event not too long ago where I think they evacuated and our people were out there working. I'm just wondering if we could put a clause in there that if our people are out, then their people are out. In other words, if our people are out there collecting, then the companies we hire should be out there collecting. And we're certainly not going to put our people at more jeopardy than, and threat of life or limb than certainly.
Mr. Ware, we agree totally with you, and that's what we expected them. As long as we're working and the conditions are safe, we expect them to do that. I think what you're referring to was maybe it might have been Dorian, Matt, but we had a little bit of problem where they did some evacuations on one of our contractors, but we expect them to work, and we'll make sure when our new contracts that we're getting ready to put out for both those, we make that very clear in those contracts.
Yeah, I mean, maybe, I don't know, maybe if we can have I don't know if that's not a reciprocal clause, but a clause that if our sanitation people are out doing their jobs, then the people we have under contract should be out there doing theirs. I mean, you have to get with legal people to kind of clean that up.
We'll work with legal staff to come up with some language to make sure that as long as we're collecting in a safe manner, that we expect the same of them.
Good deal. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I think that's what you're talking about, Peter. We spoke about.
Yeah, I think that's what we were concerned about, those areas that are being serviced by contractors being left out. I mean,
Right.
and then it looks like our crews had to pick up the slack on that, particularly after the fact. And that's when we started getting those phone calls. Yeah. Right. Thank you all.
Yes, sir.
Matt and Tom, if I could raise a question and maybe a suggestion. Thank you for increasing our efficiency and rerouting, and it sounds like we're off to a good start with that. I I want to make it clear, this discussion came up also recently with our personnel down there in environmental services, that our move to efficiency is by no means a path forward to reducing our workforce. And in the way I view it, the more efficient we become, the more territory we could cover on our own, as opposed to contracting it out to somebody else. And so I don't know if you got enough time here to make this play for the West Ashley contract coming back up, but you know, maybe you could shave off that area by 1 route or 2 routes and add more of our own personnel picking up that area versus paying somebody else to do it. Just a thought.
Yeah, so we'll be glad to look at that. And you're exactly right. The one thing we want to make sure, and we stress to all our employees up there, that when we become efficient in these routes, we're not looking, as Matt can tell you, we continually have vacancies, and drivers are some of the hardest positions to fill in the city because of the CDL license. I think anybody that works with that, the testing that's required, and the substance abuse testing that's required, and things for those are very difficult positions to fill. And we're all the time working, you know, with Amy and HR to get those positions. They do a great job of making available to us, but still, it's a tough thing to do. But I think, Mayor, that's something we could probably look at and see if we can do. It's just all this construction, new single family houses. Matt, what is it? How many houses in a normal route?
Oh, the ASLs are right around 1,000 to 1,100, and the rear loads are between 500 and 600.
That's what I thought. So rerouting, as the mayor just mentioned, that's one thing I wanted to mention. That's another item in our budget where, thanks to Amy, we've been able to kind of move a little bit forward and do the actual purchase of some of it up front in 2020. So therefore, reduce some of our costs in 2021. But that's something that we've worked on, and I think based on what we've seen with these initial routes Monday, as we continue to work through rerouting, we're going to continue hopefully to become more efficient and have more opportunities like the mayor just mentioned.
Great. Councilmember Waring.
Thank you. Mr. O'Brien, can you tell me if the private companies we're hiring, in particular in the suburban areas, are they employing the trucks with the robotic arm? We have the 2 traditional guys on the back of the truck.
So it's a mixture. I
It's a
can
mix
answer that. Daniel Island has a mixture of rear loads and the ASLs, kind of like what we have. And then Carolina Waste has what they call a Carrata, which is basically a front load truck with a big bucket on front that they dump into there. And then they also use.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Jackson.
Thank you. I really appreciate you all making this clear in the way that you have. So I just had a couple of questions, knowing, you know, the bane and the pleasure of a council member is to hear from residents who are not happy with the maintenance of their streets and sidewalks and all of that. I know that we've got the downtown area below Broad or historic district covered by the hospitality fee. So but I'm looking at the one that in the base budget, it's 200,000. So essentially that's all the other boroughs that don't qualify for hospitality, correct? And then you're proposing that we cut them by 100,000. So what would that actually look like, you know, what would we be sacrificing?
I think, Councilmember, what we would be looking at in that situation is, instead of obviously there's some areas, older areas, where there aren't sidewalks, where new sidewalks will be wanted. So this would be a heavier concentration on repairs of existing sidewalks versus actual construction of new ones.
Okay, because if it were construction, that would be on that same line item?
For the new construction, for any ones, Matt, correct me if I'm wrong, any ones outside of the historic district, yes, ma'am, that's where our funds come from for that.
Okay.
Work with Keith Benjamin with CTC. We have been able to get some sidewalk projects that are available through going through CTC. We're doing one camp in Riverland right now, and I'm trying to think there's another one we've got going on.
Yeah,
So those,
familiar with those on James Island. Well, can I just put on the table then for, planning purposes? I don't know what the legal constraints are, but it seems like we've had such a home run with the transit amenities, transportation amenities as we've worked with commercial developers. Can we continue to go on more of a robust program to obtain sidewalk construction? I know we do some of it, but I don't really know the parameter. So I would like to know more about that, but it seems like now could be the time to
We actually met,
developers are partners.
Eric Schultz, who, as everyone knows, heads up the TRC process. We actually had a meeting last week where there are some situations where new development, mainly commercial, has, residential is kind of covered in the code. Their sidewalks are required by the zoning thing, and they have to install them. But commercial,
Right.
especially out 61 and some other areas where there's holes in the continuous sidewalks. But Eric and I have met. We met with everybody, and we're going to continue the TRC to require those sidewalks, including some places you'll see a project go in where there'll be sidewalk in front of it, and it may not be on the adjoining properties because there's not been any development. So that's a good point, Ms. Jackson, and we will continue to work to push to make sure where we can get the developers anywhere we can to be responsible for that initial installation of those sidewalks.
That'd be great. And I do feel like we've got precedent now out here on Folly Road with the the Folly Road overlay requiring what we call the multi-use path every time a property is redeveloped above its 50% ratio, as well as new construction. So let's.
Councilman Waring and Shade will also, at Public Works Utilities, a lot of times you'll see where we come for those maintenance agreements where we've on DOT roads where we've requested and required through TRC to have sidewalks installed, and that's part of the trade-off is we're taking over that maintenance of them. So that's another way that we additionally are able to get additional new sidewalks put in.
Mr. O'Brien, you know how I feel about that.
Yes, sir, I do. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I don't disagree with you on some of them, sir.
I mean, seriously, when you talk about, St. Andrews and Route 61, that whole corridor, that's a checkerboard of county and city, right? So I think the overlay, approach is really instrumental in those sorts of areas where we share jurisdictional lines.
Absolutely.
By property. Okay, great. Thank you.
Any other?
Than that, the only other thing it's really is a highlight is in our budget, as I mentioned, is potential additional costs for the contract for Daniel Island and Cainhoy Area Waste Services, and we're still in the process of negotiating that. We've gone back to them and asked them to sharpen their pencil. And we don't have a final number yet, but that's something we're working to reduce as much as possible.
All right, Councilmember Waring.
Yeah, one last thing, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. Mr. Altop and Mr. O'Brien, I just wanted to convey, we had an issue that was in the op-ed piece that the mayor and myself wrote, about the employees and some input. I talked to a number of people of our employees in the sanitation department. I got to tell you, they spoke highly of Mr. Altop and you, Mr. O'Brien. So, which gave me great confidence to go forward, frankly. We knew of the good works that you all do, but there's nothing like the line employees. And I'm talking about people on the trucks.
Yes, sir.
That I spoke to. And they spoke, and I ran some of the questions by them. Do they feel like they're being discriminated against? Do they have the proper PPEs and the like? I think they're being, put at risk to get a job versus, COVID-19 and all of that. And I'm gonna tell you, got some very high, unsolicited positive responses from.
It's interesting you say that, Mr. Waring. When I woke up that morning and read the article that initiated all this, I was actually very excited because I looked at all their points. We had responses to all of them, and really appreciate you and the mayor putting that in the paper. And one thing I wanted to pass on to the committee also is, as a result of our meeting, some of the spokespeople for our guys up there and ladies, Matt and I offered the opportunity to every employee for a private meeting, one-on-one with either Matt and I, or just me. And Matt, last time I checked, we had one person take us up on it.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Actually, it's more than that now. We're up to about 8 people that's taken us up on it. Everybody's been positive.
And them at all times.
Well, that's great, man. I want just say thank you for the job you and Mr. Altop are doing. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you all for your support. We appreciate it very much.
Any other questions for Mr. O'Brien or Mr. Altop? All right, well, thank you all for the presentation and all you're doing. Amy, what we got next?
Yep, Parks next, so I will give it to and whoever else he wants to speak as well.
Jason, is that you?
Are you muted?
Looked like he was trying to connect there.
He was on a second ago.
I think Wes is on as well.
Wes and Edmund both are, but
Okay. I'm here. I was I was listening to the IAM meeting and this meeting waiting for anyway, so I'm here.
Okay.
Let's see. So I was muted most of the time, so Amy, tell me where you want to start.
wherever you want to start, I do have the if you need me to put anything up on the screen, I can. I just had sent everything to everybody, so you all let me know if you need me to put anything up. But why don't you start with the ballpark, because that's easiest.
Okay.
So,
So,
that real
so
quick.
you've shared this the spreadsheet with everyone?
Yes.
Okay. So if it's okay with the committee, then I'm just going to start at line 1 under the Joe Riley ballpark, as Amy just referenced. And I'm just, so we made our original budget request across the board, trying to be considerate and knowing that we get requests from all departments across the board. We're a little bit unique that way. We get requests from the police department, the fire department, the recreation department, and those are our biggest internal clients. So then we, they have priorities already set, and then we have to kind of go through and say, okay, well, they sent us their complete wish list. So then we have to go back to them and say, okay, well, we have some considerations. We have serious budget issues. We need you to narrow that list down. So we did that, and that was our original request. And then the sheet that Amy sent you, when she had requested us to go back, look at our 2020, come in 10% under our 2020 budget. That's what we did. Now, what you'll see on the sheet that was given to you is, and I know I just said a bunch of words, but I'll start at the first line there. Overtime budget request. This is simply a request that as staff is here for another year and they get a cost of living adjustment, somebody might get a promotion. That's just an increase to cover that additional cost of work. Probably our staff that is at the ballpark, other than the COVID year, gets called out on overtime calls and is scheduled for overtime more than any of our other divisions across the parks department, with having a couple thousand people in the ballpark during games. Seat replacements. This is a project that we've been doing for many years now. We've been trying to take a section of seating every year and replace them. I wouldn't even say we're halfway through that, but this was just the next year trying to replace sections of the old and faded seats that have probably been there from day one. The third line item is the request for funding to complete the engineering contract for the structural repairs to the stadium that were identified in the study that was done previously, which would include structural steel repairs, painting, grade beam repairs. This is all stuff that mostly you cannot see, but it's stuff in an over almost 30-year-old facility sitting on the edge of a salt marsh that just needs to be addressed. So that's that covers the 3 line items for the ballpark. And let us know if you have any questions or comments.
Jason, I just want to add to that, because we have new members on the ad hoc committee, that we had that, I guess it was last year, right, where we talked about these life safety sort of issues that we're having, and that would be right there, that 100,000 to help move forward with correcting those life safety issues.
all the discussions were we would approach these in multiple year increments.
Hey,
Yes.
Jason,
Yes.
since there was not a season this past year, is a seat replacement something we can punt on for another year?
I'm sorry, what was the last part?
Since we did not have a season this past year,
Right.
baseball season, are the seat replacements, the $35,000 requested increase, is that something we can punt on for another year?
Yeah, I mean, we could certainly not do it. They're not falling apart really.
Right.
When they break, you can't get replacement parts.
So,
I mean, the comment that Amy had about the required maintenance back in, we were revised in 2018 seems to be the highest priority of all of that, which I would agree with, that we needed to address those. That's a safety issue. But if we needed to cut some corners, that would just seem to be one of those things on seat replacements to be looking at.
Jason, we're kind of playing catch up though too, right? With that seat
That's
replacement.
right.
So one of the things that we talked about, Jason, Wes, Edmund and I, were that, we have such a deferred maintenance problem as it is. And we're in a hard budget time, but we also don't want to make our deferred maintenance issues any worse than they are. So we really kind of need to focus on those things and do as much as we can. I mean, so I just want to say that.
Great point. Yeah.
Councilmember Jackson.
Thanks. I don't mean to be too facetious, but former Mayor Riley is about to retire as the chief fundraiser for the IM. So I think a Friends of the Joe fundraiser campaign after 30 years hard use. I mean, seriously, why shouldn't we involve the fans and the community and the people who, love the Joe and love Mr. Joe? I think that's something we should take seriously and send an ambassador to former Mayor Riley to ask him to lead that campaign.
That's now that he raised $90 million or so for the African American Museum.
He's a pro. He's a pro. He can do it in his sleep.
That's of the Joe. Hey, not to be thick, but on this spreadsheet, like on the seats, you got seat replacements. The base budget is 150,000, and then it says the requested increase is 35,000. So are you saying that we're asking for 185 or what am I missing here?
Mayor, that's just for that object code. It's a little confusing, I guess, because what the increase is what we're asking for is for the seat replacements, but it's that whole object code, which it's escaping me what it is.
That base budget is the general maintenance budget for the actual facility.
I see.
So the 35 would be specific to ordering those seats. Yeah.
I see. So that's new. The 35 is a new increase.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, basically we have the 150,000 that covers just, general maintenance needs at the ballpark, whether we need to replace a toilet, fix a light fixture. It's nothing above and beyond daily routine maintenance items, not anything replacement wise.
Okay. Gotcha. All right. Thank you. Carry on.
So if there's nothing else on that, we'll just kind of keep moving on through the list. If everybody's good with that.
Yep.
Okay, so moving right down into the 4 electrical line items. Again, the overtime is the prior year we had requested new staffing. We had got some new electricians, and that we always have overtime. That's just to accommodate, again, salary increases and new staffing for the coming year. Street lights, we had originally made a request for basically a 3% increase, and that basically just covers all the new development around the city. Every street light you see around the city gets the cost of each energy cost of each fixture gets billed against this budget. So that's where that gets accommodated. The original request was for another $100,000. We've removed that request. I anticipate that new street lights are come every day, and will probably be over. So, but the request was cut. The next line item was probably maybe a little premature, was for the lighting on Glen McConnell Road widening and Clements Ferry Road that we reduced our request from. There are hundreds of new lights on each of these roadways. Each one's billed to the city, and again goes against our electrical budgets. You know, we've had requests for lighting along Glen McConnell ever since I started here, and we had this opportunity to get those lights installed as part of the widening project. And any questions on that? I'll just keep moving through unless somebody just wants to kind of shout out and stop me.
Jason, I just would appreciate a clarification that, so the big budget is the $3.5 million, and that's all for maintenance, or is there new lights included in that?
That covers the cost of every single street light around the city, and that's based on our agreement with Dominion. Each light has a cost per month, and that's what it comes out to be. So every street light you see around the city.
It's basically our electric bill. But again, Jason, where
I see. Okay.
you have 200,000 on that line by the Glen McConnell, but then you say department cuts of 200. So are you saying we're not asking for the 200 for Glen McConnell now?
That's right. So the 2021 request, which we're looking at here, these are requests that were made for next year that we have decided, either in this case, these projects probably won't even be completed by then. But yeah, so we removed those requests to get our budgets down below our original 2020 budget.
I got you. But in this case, it's just because the lights won't be needed until 2022.
Yeah.
Right, I got you.
And then, so this next line item, electrical equipment and leases, we've never had a line item where what we use to rent lifts and equipment from. So we created a line item so we could track equipment rental. You know, if we had a scenario where we needed to rent a lift, and then that way we could track it and determine if it would be better off buying something in the future. And those numbers, those costs have always just been billed to something else in our budget. So we kind of just took that one off, and we'll deal with them as they come. Again, facilities maintenance, moving straight into that unless there are any questions. The overtime is just another, you know, staffing and more staffing, more pay increase in those budgets. Moving down to facilities maintenance project requests. Now, these are all, as some of the stuff above, project specific. The Forest Park Bridge access was a footbridge that connected the bikeway to Forest Park, and when the stormwater project was completed, that bridge got damaged and it never got repaired as part of that project. So we've been trying to figure out how to get that thing fixed now that we have a significant change in grade and we have to make it accessible. So we took that request out. We're going to try to see if we have money at the end of this year to see if we can get that done this year.
Jason,
Yeah.
I don't have to, but we actually put general fund reserve money away for that, so we have that covered.
Would you say, Amy, we didn't hear you?
We have general fund reserve money put away for that. We had talked about that at one of the council meetings a long time ago, and the council had requested that we put money there. We've got that. We've got it covered.
Okay, so we're going to try to do that this year before the year's up.
Great.
Thank you very much, Amy.
I'd rather take the 35,000 for seats and apply to that bridge. I think Councilman Wynn would join me in that request.
I'm telling you, we need that bridge, I'm telling you.
Yes, you do.
So jumping right down to the Shaw Center. So this is a request that both came from the mayor and our recreation department. The recreation department requested that we replace the floor in the gymnasium. Well, that's a great request, but the entire building needs to be renovated because we have lots of moisture issues there. So we had made both of these requests to fix all of the moisture issues before we went in and installed a brand new floor. Again, we removed that from our request, trying to get our request down to the 10% under the 2020 that was that we were trying to meet. Next, Hazel Parker roof. The playground house needs a new roof, and we want to get that fixed before it starts leaking or it's damaged. But it's an aged roof, and it needs to be replaced. And again, I'll just keep moving unless you have any questions. Dock Street Theater water pump system. I'm going to try to get that done this year as well. So we kind of removed it off of the request. We'll see where our budgets are in the fourth quarter and our facilities maintenance budget to see if we can afford it. So it's a system, it's a pump system that it could fail at any time. And we're trying to get ahead of some of those things and not have an emergency scenario where we have to do an emergency purchase. Meeting Street Fire Tower, city-owned historic fire tower. It needs to be painted. We struck that off the list. Not a life safety issue, but it's something that needs to be done. Keep moving on down. Moultrie Park restroom leak.
You think if you don't have any issue with those smokestacks coming down, if we don't take care of that fire tower, we're gonna have a riot on our hands instead.
That's right. Moultrie Park restroom. So we have a leak underneath the slab of that the little restroom facility right there at the tennis courts. It's a sewage issue. We've got to get it fixed, and it's kind of an intrusive fix. So you have to tear out some concrete and make that happen. We'll try to do it this year again. Hopefully we don't have any storm, and we'll get through with low maintenance needs for the rest of the year. Rag Square retaining wall. This is, if you're familiar with this elevated part near the Dewberry and the Second Presbyterian Church, this is the low wall around the park in the front of the church. It's just a historic wall. All of the mortar's coming out, and the more it rains and the more weather we have, the mortar fails and we'll start losing the wall. We removed that from the request and try to do something if our budgets allow this year. Moving into some fire station requests. So a couple of years ago, we made a request for a specific project manager for the fire department, which we did. It took us many months to find the right person to fill that spot. We filled that spot. I think that was the end of 18. Neil came right in, jumped in, started working with the fire department to assess their needs. Jumped right in. We did a full station renovation over at Station 13 on Folly Road. A wonderful project that finished up, and it just it made the living quarters for our first responders a wonderful project. So working with the fire department, Fire Station 7 renovation. This is on Camp Road on James Island. They've requested a full station renovation there. Hopefully we can get that work underway and we can get those facilities back up into kind of some modern living scenarios. Fire Station 19. This is a project that is on Bees Ferry Road next to the forensics building. It's a little bit of a newer station, but they had requested some renovations. We pulled that one off the list, working with the fire department. They understand where we are and why we removed that from the list. Fire Station 12. This is the small station over on Old Town Road near Charlestown Landing. This is just some simple facelift, if you will. Painting, flooring, restrooms, no design needed. We'll just kind of work with the fire department, go pick stuff out and get the interior spaces renovated and just make them a little more livable. Fire Station 18, Daniel Island, with the opening of the new Daniel Island Rec Center. There's the old municipal complex, as it was titled, space in that building where the rec staff was working out of when the Daniel Island Rec Center opens up. that staff will move into the rec center, and the fire department wanted to renovate and move the station, expand the station into that space. Again, it was something we originally requested, and it came off when we went through our budget reduction exercises. Coming out of the fire station, we move into police department. So a lot of the leased spaces around the city, they're just older leased facilities. They might be an old condo or a little old storefront. Really, this is some basic maintenance to work on drywall issues, maybe some mold issues, mildew issues, probably more so than mold, but to just make them a little more livable again. CPD headquarter renovation, request from the police department to install some protective glass at their front doors, and renovate their locker rooms and do some work in their lobby. And so again, we get requests from many different of our internal clients, and these were the two from the police department. And then coming out of facilities into more park type stuff, the recreation department, we have lights all around the city and some of our ball fields. And when the ospreys love to build nests in the tops of the lights, and when they get up in there, we can't turn the lights on, and it affects the way the recreation department programs their activities. You might have to turn a pole off in it, and you don't get enough light on a field because of the protection of those ospreys. If we turn them on, you might light the nests on fire. So there's lots of, we did one out at James Island Rec Center. We put a pole out there with a platform on the top of it, and it took a couple of years, but the ospreys are now nesting on that pole. We had to go up and move sticks every time they started bringing the sticks in, which is totally legal. But it took a couple of years, but they're now nesting on that platform, so it does work. Fort Pemberton is our new park space greenbelt purchase on James Island. It has 2 existing docks. They need to be stabilized before they fall apart. One of the floating docks is about to fall off the hinge, if you will. And the second of the docks needs to be kind of stabilized and some handrails put up, some basic rot repair, just kind of general maintenance of these older age docks that we purchased as part of that project. Again, we took that, we pulled that request, and we also reduced the request for the osprey platforms. Let's see, so this is interesting. This next Parks Administration request, the mayor can tell you that at his press release today, press conference, that 12 years ago, we purchased a little PA system that many of you have used throughout the years at some of your events. And we originally had purchased that PA system to use in-house here at the Parks Department during our gatherings. Well, today, that 12-year-old equipment failed right at the start of the mayor's press conference. So I guess we're going to try to buy a new one this year with some other money. So that would really kind of, we'll remove that from the next year's request if we get it purchased this year. Coming down into grounds maintenance, we had, this has been a multi-year request for the Gadsden Borough Park plant replacement over the past couple of years with 2 hurricanes that have flooded that park out. We've lost probably half the plant material. So due to saltwater invasion, it looks neat and tidy. Some of the plants have survived. The trees are doing okay. But there's been lots of requests over the years from the general public. When are we going to fix the park? Well, like I said, the park looks great. Just we've lost a considerable amount of plant material, and that was that's a request to kind of get the park back into shape. This next request was a request that was made by the Charleston Parks Conservancy that may be accommodated in another part of the budget, but they perform work in 24 of our parks around the city, and they had requested an additional $80,000 to the budget that they get right now. I'm not sure that line item is wrong. The base budget is not 1.1 million. So that should be, I believe we currently fund them about $70,000 a year. This was to bring them up to 150. if that math is right. And so we've reduced that to keep it at the current $70,000. They're working up a summary of what they do in the parks and how much, what value that is with this to the city, and including their programming and their maintenance and plant costs. So we'll have some more justification on that. But again, it was reduced to try to get down below our 2020 requests. This next one is simply just giving this request a line item. It's never had a line item. It's the press risers and grandstands that we just deployed for the MLK parade, just to try to pick it up somewhere as an identified cost instead of just trying to use like a facilities budget or a professional service budget to track that. And again, overtime for constructions division, this is again just accommodating new staffing and additions in pay. This next one is agricultural supplies. This is a budget that we used to fertilize our parks, to put out ant control, to keep our grass robust and hopefully able to withstand the use that it gets. The additional request was just to keep our recent increase in care for other non-athletic fields parks, such as Washington Park or White Point Gardens. St. Augustine grass takes a 12-month herbicide, fungicide, and insecticide regime to keep it looking good. Right now, Washington Park is about in its 5th year of grassing, and it's probably getting close to needing an entire new turf replacement. But again, that reduction is to get us down to what the request was, to get us under our 2020. Agricultural supplies would be where we would use to buy seeds for our greenhouses. It's again, fertilization, anything that we would, plant replacements. If you have a plant here or there that you wanted just to kind of fix up, we don't, these budgets have all increased over the past couple of years, and we're doing a lot of different work out there. But again, we're just trying to do our part to get, to try to get a balanced budget for next year. So I know that was me talking a lot, and that doesn't cover everything in the Parks Department, but it covers our request and what we saw as opportunities to kind of cut back for next year.
Councilmember Appel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And Jason, thank you for that presentation. I just wanted to make sure we had a few bucks for the Greenway somewhere in the budget. It may not have been something you covered, but just wanted to make sure we had some funding for the next fiscal year for Greenway related maintenance, certainly, and maybe even a project or two that we've been discussing over the last several months.
Yeah, the mayor and I discussed that yesterday, and to try to identify something more of a capital type budget versus our maintenance dollars. But we did talk about that yesterday.
We're looking. Councilmember Jackson.
Thank you. I agree. Thank you, Jason, for making your points clear to us. I'm just wondering, I remember budgets from the last couple of years that you were, prioritizing additional maintenance staff and small project staff, or however you were titling them. So were you able to do those, to add those positions? I mean, I know you got the positions, but were you able to hire, or are they?
As you remember, we had an incredible increase of approved staffing for last year.
Right.
And for this year, we were able to hire some of those facilities personnel,
Okay.
but we pushed pause on many others. I don't have the total number of what we were approved and what we didn't hire, but there's a number of open positions still that we did not get to. Like we were going to add a horticulture crew, we were going to add a forestry crew, so we didn't get through that whole process when the hiring freeze went into effect.
I can speak on facilities specifically. We were approved 6 or 7 positions. Right now, we only have one of those open, and it's been open all year, and it's been an HVAC position. But the other ones are not open at this time.
I mean, they've not been filled, or they're frozen? Is that what you mean, Wes?
Yes, ma'am, they're frozen.
Okay. So are all of those positions in the 2021 base budget that you've submitted?
Yes, they are.
No, they're frozen.
They're there. They're just frozen.
Okay, well, I resonated with all of your requests a couple of years ago, having been a longstanding facilities manager person, and I think we should be, helping you think more intentionally as the year goes on. I mean, what is the cost to not being able to fill those positions? Are we spending money, on outside contractors, or what are we giving up in order to keep those positions, from costing anything in 2021? So
I think I can address that, and Wes can jump in if he wants, but it's probably as quickly as we can get to the work orders, let's have a longer turnover and work orders. And yes, we've had great momentum over the past couple of years on getting more maintenance dollars and more staffing. And it really has made a difference. On a couple of years ago, I think we renovated 12 or 13 different park houses. And it really makes a difference. We've replaced so many new playgrounds over the past couple of years, and those little things make the difference. And in having that additional staff, we've been able to over the past couple of years do some work in-house ourselves, some actual renovation work, which used to happen many, many, many years ago before the city. 20 years ago, we used to build everything in our parks, and it's given us the opportunity to do things like that. So, more people, the more we can get done, the more we can catch up on some of that deferred stuff. So, but with everyone's help, with Amy's, the mayor's, and city councils over the past couple of years, we've had great momentum, and we've got really good things accomplished. So I just know we're dealing with a tough year this year, and we'll have to figure out how to get through it next year.
And with the fire station 13 renovation that Jason spoke about earlier, we did 99% of that work with in-house staff. We did it all. I think we subbed out the windows. The only thing we really subbed out there. So yeah, more help is great for us. We would love to do more work in-house.
And one of the challenges is we have 2 HVAC techs, and we had two great guys that have been here for a couple of years. And I mean, they know everything there is to know backwards and forwards about how to maintain and fix a mechanical system, an air conditioning system. And one of them passed away suddenly, and that's the position we have open right now. And it's really hard to find an HVAC technician to come from the private sector into the public realm right now, because everything is booming. So there's a lot of good reasons to work for the city right now, but those are some of the hard ones to fill. Those skilled tradesmen, kind of mechanical positions, they're hard.
All right. Got Dudley, Shade, and Waring. I think I saw y'all in that order. Councilmember Gregory.
Yeah, Jason, thanks for all the great work you do. Question with regard to the Cross Creek footbridge. Will that have a cost to the city?
So the way I understand it, right now we're working on a cost estimate from like a prefab bridge builder, and I'm not sure what their agreement says, but the developer is supposed to fund some of that work.
Yeah.
So as soon as we get a cost estimate for that footbridge, we're going to reconvene here at the city, and then I guess the planning department will take it back to the developer, because they're responsible for some of that cost.
Because our favorite person is just really pushing
Yeah.
this issue.
We're working on that. Councilmember Shade.
Jason, this is a really small item, but I think we deferred it for at least a year, not two. And that's that walkway, trailway around Park Shore Park. I think it was like $8,000, and we cut it. Any chance of squeeze? That's one of those nice little projects that would, particularly in this COVID-19 world, for folks to be able to enjoy that park. Any way of squeezing that back in somewhere to this budget?
I mean, I think it's just it's an exercise of numbers. If we put it in there and it gets funded, we can do it. So it's, we can work with Amy and see what we can drop to put that back in.
Which
one?
one?
If you wouldn't mind us, sir.
So the
Which
Park
one
Shore,
was that?
the Park Shore
This is a
playground.
Park Shore which butts up Mayor around Park Shore 1, 2, and 3.
2, 3.
2, yeah. So it's by the park, and a couple of years ago we had a fire that we had to replace the playground equipment. And this is sort of a natural trail that goes around the park, and it ties in to the sidewalk over by the North Bridge. So it's a nice little trail area, and folks have been asking about it for a couple of years. Anyhow, if we could square that in somehow, that'd be good.
Councilmember Waring, did we lose you there?
No, I'm still here. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Jason, I wanted to ask about the Carl Richardson Park. It used to be called the Bender Street Park. I know money was appropriated out of previous A-tax or H-tax money. So when will that be built?
So we had almost all of our future capital projects when COVID started went on pause. And after we get through this budget process, we're ready to put it out to bid. And I think we're gonna after this process, we're gonna put it out for bid.
Okay, good deal. Thanks a lot, man.
Yeah,
All right.
No, I'm fine.
Oh, okay, great. Councilmember Jackson.
Yeah, I have one more question. You said the word deferred, and I know that in the last 2 or 3 years, you have put forward to the council for consideration a buildings assessment for maintenance, deferred maintenance. And that was a huge number, just doing the study of our deferred maintenance needs. So is that still in your base budget, or have we cut that out in terms of a game plan?
You know, we didn't bring that back this year. Working with the fire department, Chief Curia had requested the same thing just for the fire department. And we talked about it a little bit, and our new project manager that we have now, he's working with the fire department on a daily basis, and they're determining what those needs are. And we're creating a plan. So starting with that Fire Station 13 renovation, we're doing that work. So I think for the fire department now is instead of hiring a consultant team to do that work, I think we should really focus on just using our internal knowledge and getting the work actually done. Outside of the fire department, certainly there are other facilities that could use some assessments. With this last budget, the previous year's budget, we had a parks analyst that went on freeze, but that person was going to start tracking maintenance and trying to come up with maintenance plans, working with our staff. Is right now for all of the 4 or more million square feet of buildings we have in the city, we don't have maintenance plans. We don't have anything that says, okay, in 5 years you need to paint, in 10 years you need to replace floors here. So we don't have that tool in the toolkit that then maps out our future maintenance, which is would help with this whole budget process. So I said kind of 2 things, right? We're working in the fire department. We're getting stuff done. We've got some good momentum going, and with our facilities staffing and our capital projects, we have Fire Station 11 wrapping up. We got 6 and 8 that are 6 is underway, full renovation. 8 would be next. Those are FEMA mitigation grants. And we're getting ready to build a new fire station on Johns Island. I know we have a number of new fire stations that are out there that are needed. So I know I kind of said a lot of stuff just now, but.
So can I add to that a little bit, please?
Yeah.
Councilmember Jackson, we had taken it out, what, 2 years in a row now that we've taken it out. And that one person that Jason was talking about was going to work with the facilities study person to kind of make sure we got all those plans in place, but then of course we took it out of the budget 2 years in a row. And when we did meet with the fire department recently, we talked about.
You're not coming across clearly. I mean, can you
You're
get
breaking
closer?
up.
Is this better?
Yes.
Yes, much better.
On video. I don't know what's going on with my computer lately, so hold on. So we talked with the fire department, and we will look at it this year too, if there's a possible way that we could add it back in, because we know how important it is. And what we had promised Chief Curry last year was that we would focus first on the fire stations and then do the rest of the city, which is probably what we would do now as well, if we could put something in. So we're gonna look at it two ways. If we just did fire stations, like how much that would cost, and then doing a whole citywide study. We'll have those numbers. I have procurement working on that to see what numbers we might come up with. So that's where we are with that anyway.
If we did have it, it would certainly help with a priority-based budgeting system, and it would help us project out for 5 and 10 year increments when we know we have, if we need to paint an entire facility instead of waiting until it's just banged up. So sorry for those basic terms.
I'd like to add in one thing. We performed one of those studies at Joe Riley. That's what kind of generated the life safety project that we're currently performing this year. And that's why we want to continue that program. That's why we asked for engineering dollars to come up with specs and design to move forward with that one as well. We've also done one, we performed one, I think in maybe 2017 on all the parking garages. Well, now that work's now been deferred for a couple of years. So if we're going to do these plans, we need a commitment from everyone involved to not only just do the plan, but then follow through with the plan.
Yep.
And we're just taking those biggest issues in each of those places and doing them as we can. And obviously they're important. We did that with stadiums. So we've done a lot of special facilities, just not the city as a whole. And we do need that information so we can know every year how much we need to be budgeting for deferred maintenance and making sure that we're taking care of our buildings. Otherwise, we're going to continue to have this problem.
All right. I think I heard most of that. Councilmember Gregory, back to you.
Yeah, Jason, are we at a stalemate on Longborough? Any progress at all?
We talked about that recently. Legal, I think we're at a junction where we need outside legal help to get through over the hump with the HOA. Okay. We're somewhat at a stalemate, and Susan and her team have just been swamped with other things. And she talked about getting an outside counsel to work on it, but I don't think she has the funding right now.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Any other questions for Jason or Wes?
Yeah, I think we should buy Amy a better computer.
At least.
Have to cut back 10%. So, Amy, what we got next? Thank you, Jason. Thank you.
Well, thank you everybody for your support. And like I said, over the past couple of years, we've made some really monumental movements and getting things fixed up. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we have a little bit of time if you want to go over some smaller departments really quick.
Okay.
It's really hard to hear you, Amy.
Yeah, I'm really sorry. Let me try to open my computer. That might help.
Are you up close but not too close?
I'm really close, actually. Is that better?
That's better.
Okay. So hopefully I can control this now.
That's much better.
Okay. Let me see what I can do. Okay. Is it still working on my shared screen?
I'm seeing HR right now.
Yes.
Okay. So this is HR. You know, there's a tiny budget that they have. They have some like $55,000 worth of cuts. Some of that is because we have a hiring freeze. We're anticipating a hiring freeze again for 2021. A lot of that will be less background and drug tests that we'll need to do, and advertising and things like that. That's the biggest place that they cut their budget. But other than that, it's pretty much where it needs to be, I think. Any questions on that?
There's not much there. Okay.
That's why I figured we could get through some of these smaller. Livability and tourism, they just had to increase their vet costs. Really not much at all. They have a lot of vacancies right now in their department that they're not having to fill. So that's a little bit of additional salary savings. Until we're really kind of back up and running, those savings will continue.
Mhm.
And then housing and community development. So there was a community liaison and homelessness specialist that we put in the budget in 2020 so that will continue into 2021, but that position is being funded by the CVB, or at least most of it. So that's why the increase, they have a negative there. And then some of their positions, they'll continue to fund out of their grants rather than putting it back into the general fund. You'll see the professional and contractual services, the $150,000, that's kind of a placeholder right now for the warming shelter that we're working on, which hopefully we will have some contributions for. It won't, so we'll have some revenue to offset that expense.
I don't know if council members are aware.
Okay.
If you don't mind, I'll share with them very briefly that both of the warming shelters, all three really in the region that we've been relying on, are all planned to be out of business this winter. That's Hibben United Methodist Church in Mount Pleasant, Aldersgate United Methodist up in North Charleston, and the county sheriff's warming center on Leeds Avenue. All have let us know that they're not planning on operating this year. And so staff has been putting together a plan as bare bones as we can, and using one of our city facilities to have a place when the weather estimated 35 nights, I think, a year, where below 40 degrees, we would open up a shelter for those who need to warm.
Amy, this is Rick. Can you go back to that community liaison and homelessness specialist?
Oh, is that the one that you all had asked to put in?
Yes.
Okay, so I had that mixed up with the outreach coordinator.
Yes.
Okay, so some of this with those positions, we're still needing to get a little bit more information. So we're working with HR on that one, Rick.
Yeah, this is the one that's on the street dealing with the folks who are the panhandlers and the folks on I think we've got one already who's, Mayor, you know her name, and this would be the second one that they were looking for.
Talia.
So,
she's doing a great job, and we're starting to successfully move some folks from the sidewalk to services and to getting a home. So it's really just that one-on-one attention really makes a difference, and it takes a big pressure off of our police department when we can address these individuals if they're not hardened criminals. If they just really need some direction, it really helps to be able to have this person and another available to help them.
Okay, and so really the other biggest reduction that Gianna had offered is the Fenwick parcel, the development of that, the specs, I guess, and the design for that, which she's going to pay out a fee in lieu. And that was really it for housing and community development.
Any questions on that, anybody? All right.
And that's really all I have for right now. These are some of the outstanding issues that we have right now. We're still waiting on rent expense and property insurance numbers, which I hope to have within the next week. So we can add that to the budget. We're still need to discuss on the salary savings number for 2021. We've just right now in the budget itself used the 2020 amount. Calculate fringes. That's going to be dependent on if we have one, if we furlough the if we allow new positions, or if we eliminate positions. And those are vacant positions. I'm not talking about any currently employed positions. We need to revise the debt payment for the calculation of the housing bond, just to make sure that we have the correct debt payment, and finalize the 2021 lease purchase, which we'll talk about in a future meeting as well. And then just some transfers out as well. So these are all things that we're working on right now. Our next meeting is next Wednesday. Police, fire, and IT will be talking with you all, and then we'll do other departments as well. The next meeting is on the 29th, and we'll just go over any of the other departmental budgets we haven't talked about, including enterprise funds, mainly the working fund, because that will be the biggest one. And we'll also start talking about revenues. And that was it.
Amy or Mayor, somebody, can I just ask, I'm sure it's a legal question in terms of what we're required to do as far as balancing our budget. When we talk about eliminating vacant positions, is that, I know that would be a clear way of balancing the budget, but can we also use freezing positions in the same way?
Yeah, we wouldn't have to necessarily eliminate, because what we do, if we're freezing positions, it all goes into the salary savings amount. So it reduces the budget by however much we calculate the salary savings. So just freezing those positions would do the same thing.
Okay, that's good to know. I mean, I guess, you know, if we're going to be talking about not giving directors the chance to hire because we need to save the money, if we freeze them, that would basically retain the thinking that they've done, you know, for some of the directors, it's 2 years, maybe even 3 years ago when they justified the positions they're not able to fill this year or next year. So maybe it would make sense to have them, you know, have the opportunity to rework a staffing plan. But at the same time, I've seen how hard they work to, you know, develop their plan and deliver it and sell it, and basically, you know, help us all see their thinking when they put together a staffing plan. So I'm glad you would have the option.
The reason why I said that was because we did have some departments that had suggested eliminating positions, and we have not included that in anything that we've done because we're not certain it would make good sense to eliminate them, but I just thought I would bring it to your attention. You know, in some cases, we might have more positions than we need in certain areas, and then it would make sense to go ahead and eliminate them. But like, for instance, with livability and tourism, right now, they're not as busy. They can handle those vacant positions. So we would just hold those positions until such time that we get up and running again. You wouldn't want to take those out of the budget.
Okay, great. Thank you. I appreciate that understanding.
But I think Amy has the ability to increase the amount budgeted for savings, just taking into account the freeze, right, Amy?
That's right.
So that's the way that gets handled, I think.
And that's what we did for 2020. As soon as that hiring freeze, that was one of the ways that we've cut back the budget. We've increased salary savings based on the hiring freeze.
Right. Councilmember Shade?
Yeah, I just want to go back to that comment I made earlier about the warming shelters. How many folks are we don't house them. This is the other agencies are housing these folks, but what's the number of people we're talking about who normally would visit these warming shelters? Do we know?
Yes, and I don't have the exact numbers on the top of my head, but Chris Jardin did a complete analysis of that. How many nights, how many people were at each shelter. Most of the folks from the city end up over at Hibben United Methodist, or used to. And I think the average number over there per night that they were open was about 75 or 80, somewhere in that range. If you add up the other North Charleston warming shelters, the total number in the region was something like 150 a night.
That's a lot of people.
It's a good many people and,
Yeah, it's a good number of people. And you know, Mayor, the reason I brought that up is because I've raised this question before when we have hurricanes and evacuations. We don't have any shelters in the city. I don't know what the answer is to all that, but it always bothers me that we can't take care of our citizens.
Yeah, that's more complicated because the Red Cross has to go by these guidelines to qualify the shelters and the sea level of each facility. And we just don't have buildings in our city limits that are on high enough ground to qualify for what the Red Cross requirements are. And they run those shelters, so they get to pick them. So they're all in the north area or beyond. And it seems frustrating, but there is a good reason behind it all.
I understand.
Yep. All right.
Thank you.
Anything else for the good of the order? If not, we will see y'all, well, for budget next Wednesday. We'll see you sooner for everything else.
Everybody have a nice weekend.
Great. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy.
Thank you.